Welcome to Within the Frame, where we bring the most pressing issues across the globe into focus. I'm Kim Mok-yeon. The world is entering a period of growing uncertainty. While the recent ceasefire between the U.S. and Iran has raised hopes for diplomacy, the focus is now shifting to the future of Iran's nuclear program and whether the international community can ensure credible verification. At the same time, North Korea continues to advance its nuclear capabilities, adding further pressure to an already fragile global non-proliferation regime. Now, beyond security, these geopolitical tensions are also reshaping the global economy, affecting energy markets, supply chains, and growth prospects at a time when many countries are placing greater emphasis on economic security. These issues took center stage at this year's Jeju Forum, where global leaders and experts are discussing how international cooperation can respond to an increasingly fragmented world. In our last installment of the Jeju series, we'll hear from two distinguished guests. We'll begin with Rafael Grossi, Director General of the International Atomic Energy Agency, to discuss the future of nuclear security, the challenges facing the global non-proliferation regime, and his vision for international leadership. Director General Grossi, thank you so much for joining us.
My pleasure.
So let's begin right away with Iran first, of course. Following the recent ceasefire, attention is now shifting to the next phase of nuclear diplomacy. Tell us, how significant is this moment for Iran and for the future of the global non-proliferation regime?
Well, my first reflection would be that the signature of this Memorandum of Understanding is, of course, very important. It's a step towards long-lasting peace through diplomatic means, which I believe is what we all were aspiring for, starting with the belligerents themselves. As you know, this Memorandum of Understanding has a series of areas that deal with, of course, the freedom of navigation at the Strait of Hormuz. They deal with the cessation of hostilities, respect of territorial integrity of both, and from my own perspective, the IAEA, there is a nuclear area which is going to be covered regarding, in particular, the accumulated highly enriched uranium in Iran, and also the facilities, the places, the buildings associated with this fuel cycle in Iran. The Memorandum of Understanding is relatively succinct, is brief on this point, but it contains a very, very important principle in that it says that the activities there will be supervised and monitored and verified by the IAEA. This means that we have an agreement on the principle, which is very important, but we now have to go into the technical discussions to determine where and when we start with the actual inspections. You may have been following these exchanges of statements over the past couple of days on whether there's going to be inspections, yes or no, and things of the like. This is why yesterday I reiterated that obviously we will be coordinating with Iran. There is no imminent activity starting, but there is a commitment assumed by both presidents, and the IAEA will definitely be present throughout the process.
Right, a very big role for the IAEA moving forward. We'll have to see how the details will develop in the coming months. Now, another major challenge, of course, is North Korea. The IAEA recently reported that an expansion of uranium enrichment activities are visible at Yongbyon. How concerned are you about North Korea's continued nuclear development?
Well, this is a trend that we have been reporting about for quite some time. To remind the audience, the IAEA is no longer present at the nuclear facilities of the DPRK. The inspectors were expelled back in 2009 already, but we have been following in great detail, I would say, what has been happening there, reporting about what happens at Yongbyon in particular and other facilities in country. And you may have seen that we had been indicating that at Yongbyon, a facility probably dedicated to further enrichment of uranium appeared to be present, and this was confirmed. Just a few weeks ago, we saw photos of the leader, Kim Mok-yeon, strolling, walking around a enrichment centrifuge hall. So what we see is a stable trend of increase in the production of fissile material for the development of nuclear weapons. We also see activity around the reprocessing units there, which are used to extract plutonium for further manufacture of nuclear devices. So all in all, concerning trend, we all know that there are numerous United Nations Security Council resolutions urging the DPRK to stop these activities, but this unfortunately doesn't seem to be the case. In any circumstance, in any respect, the IAEA will continue providing a technical assessment of what is going on there.
Right, so definitely continued close monitor of the situation would be necessary. Now, finally, before we let you go, you've led the IAEA through some of the world's toughest security challenges, we believe. So if you were to become the next UN Secretary General, how would that kind of experience shape your leadership and your vision for the UN?
Yes, I think that kind of experience is exactly what informs, what inspires my bid. What you will see with me as Secretary General of the United Nations is what you see with me as Director General of the IAEA. Director General that is involved, a Director General that goes to the places where the problems occur, a Director General that is on a battlefield or, as yesterday, on a boat off the coast of Fukushima, gathering samples to make sure that there is certainty about what happened after the accident. All in all, a UN that works. All in all, a Secretary General that is involved and is actively contributing to the maintenance of peace and security. We all need a UN that moves beyond declarations, that moves beyond summitry and long documents that have very little impact on the realities on the ground, to a UN that actually works.
Right, so those kinds of experiences would certainly be valuable in today's complex global environment, and we, of course, wish you all the best. Thank you so much for your insights tonight.
Thank you very much. It's been a pleasure.
Now, those security challenges have also far-reaching economic consequences, from energy markets and global trade to supply chains and long-term growth as well. To explore that side of the story, we're joined by Karim Dahu, Deputy Director for Global Relations and Cooperation at the OECD. Director Dahu, thank you so much for joining us.
My pleasure.
So let's begin first with the growth rate. The OECD has lowered its global growth forecast several times this year. Could you tell us, how would you assess the global economy today?
Well, let's say that it could do better. We have assessed the growth rate. Our forecast for 2026 is 2.8, and for 2027 it should be 3.1%. As a comparison, in the early 2000s, we had growth rates of over 5% for several consecutive years at global level. And of course, the evolution, the conflict in the Middle East has not helped the growth, because our previous forecast in February, just before the conflict, was 0.5 point ahead of what we have forecasted now. There are a number of issues that linger and that hamper the growth of the global economy, from inflation to a certain number of supply bottlenecks that affect critical input markets. Of course, the price of energy is something. It was very close to $100 for a while, and even if now we can be optimistic because the peace talks in Geneva are encouraging, and the oil markets have quite relaxed. Nevertheless, some of the consequences, like lingering inflation, etc., are likely to be persistent. There's also a relatively slow demand at global level. So all these, on the one hand, shows that the economy, the global economy, is resilient, because it could be worse. But at the same time, the prospects are relatively sluggish, and all will depend on whether a certain number of meta factors, like the global environment, the geopolitics, and other considerations, will evolve favorably.
Right. So this ongoing uncertainty really continues to weigh heavily on the global economy. Now, like you've just pointed out, one of the biggest uncertainties has been the situation in the Middle East. So following the recent ceasefire between the U.S. and Iran, what impact could it have on energy markets and supply chains and global growth as well?
First and foremost, I should say that of course, the consequences on energy markets have been significant. The prices have increased substantially, but nevertheless, they stayed for most of the time over the price of the barrel stayed below $100. So certainly didn't reach some heights that people could have feared it would reach. It's very different in this regard from what happened in the 70s. I think it's the consequence also of a global economy that is less reliant on oil, of the fact that there are also significant reserves that have been accumulated. And all these make that as adverse and that as it has been, the shock can be absorbed by the global economy in a way that is perhaps better than some could have anticipated. So there has been resilience. At the same time, there have been also other consequences that are perhaps more unevenly distributed among countries that we should not neglect. The Strait of Hormuz was a key bottleneck for a certain number of inputs, oil, gas, but also fertilizers. And a number of countries from Africa in particular and South Asia couldn't access all the fertilizers that they would have they were needing, with a consequence on the yields that the crops will deliver, and potentially on the prices of agricultural products, with prices that could be raised up to 8%. And for some key commodities like wheat, it could go up to 13%, according to the OECD assessment. So that could result in food insecurity. So the peace talks are encouraging, because we saw, as I said, immediately the oil markets relaxing, and it seems that the global economy will be able to absorb the shock with at relatively low cost from an economic viewpoint, but there will be some social and economic consequences that will be, as I said, probably unevenly distributed. And of course, those countries that are the most dependent on energy and food imports and that have already public budgets that are under strain, especially least developed countries and landlocked countries will stand to suffer more from the crisis than other countries.
Right, so we'll really have to take close tabs on the developments that will follow. Now, when we look beyond that, economic security has become a bigger priority for many countries. How is the OECD actually working to preserve an open and rules-based trading system?
Thank you. This is a good question. In fact, the OECD certainly advocates for open markets. We should be careful of not throwing the baby with the bathwater. Trade has delivered a lot of benefits in terms of reduced costs for a large number of industries, and therefore higher bargaining power for many consumers around the world. It has helped to deliver at light speed a certain number of goods, like, for instance, if you take COVID vaccines, it took dozens of inputs from many countries to be delivered. So it's important to keep markets open because otherwise the consequence will be a higher cost and a delayed transition in many areas from energy to digital. At the same time, it is legitimate that countries think more and more about economic security because we see that interdependence can sometimes be weaponized and that there can be also some choke points can be used to coerce some partners or competitors rather. And so it's important to consider the economic security angle of a number of policy areas. This is something we do now more and more routinely at the OECD. For instance, I could talk about critical minerals, where we look towards supporting our member countries, working with hand in hand with partner countries to unlock investment in critical minerals so as to diversify supply chains. This is a really important area. At the same time, seamless trade is very important. Now, I mentioned earlier the importance of choke points. We can see choke points in key technologies along critical value chains. They can be geographic, of course. We saw it with the Strait of Hormuz or the Strait of Bab el-Mandab in the Red Sea. So to avoid such disruptions to trade, connectivity is also very important. Multimodal transport, convergence of regulations among trading partners, starting with trade facilitation, custom and border procedures. The OECD also work on regional economic corridors from across the world, the India, Middle East, Europe Economic Corridor, the Trans-Caspian Corridor, the Lobito Corridor in Africa, the Bioceanic Corridor in Latin America and the Caribbean. Such cooperation between OECD members and partner countries will be more and more important. In fact, you cannot achieve economic security on your own. I think I would like to conclude my response to this question with this fact. It's important to look towards more resilient value chains, but the best way to do it is to work with trade partners and to make sure that there is regulatory convergence and that together we can address a certain number of common challenges.
Right, exactly. So maintaining both resilience and openness remains a delicate balancing act right now. Now, one of the areas where that kind of challenge is especially visible is supply chains. You have led the OECD's work on critical minerals. We're aware of that. What do you think is the biggest challenge to building more resilient supply chains?
Well, let's face it, a very important challenge in critical minerals lies in the dominant position of some actors. There are concentration aspects that can potentially jeopardize seamless trace across critical mineral value chains. For instance, the Democratic Republic of Congo holds 70% of global output of cobalt, Indonesia 65, over 2/3 of global output of nickel. China holds 80% of the production of rare earth and 98% of the one of permanent magnets that are produced based on rare earth. China is also for 19 out of 20 critical minerals, China has 70% of the market share in the refining segment of the value chain. So I think it is just healthy that to avoid shocks, such supply chains be gradually diversified. That goes through a certain number of actions or directions that we promote at the OECD. We need to address non-market practices because the price in particular of mining, of extraction is maintained artificially low to the extent that it deters investment. It's a real issue because we need over 800 billion of investment in critical minerals by 2040 if we want to stay on a net zero trajectory according to the International Energy Agency. So we address non-market practices. We work on security of supply, on making supply chains more resilient. But we work also on standard-based markets because if financiers and especially banks are to finance extraction and refining projects, they need also to be sure that there aren't too many liabilities. It's a risky business, mining, and therefore we are guardians at the OECD of a certain number of standards, like the due diligence guidance for the responsible management of mineral supply chains. We work also on traceability to ensure that the standards are covered, that the companies act against verified standards, and we also promote partnerships between OECD countries on the one hand, consuming countries, and producer countries. This is very important with a view to diversifying mineral value chains.
Definitely. Now, as we speak of supply chains, of course, it has also brought renewed attention to the Indo-Pacific region. Please explain for our viewers, why is the region becoming increasingly important to the global economy?
It's a very important region for the global economy because it's the heart of manufacturing capacity today. It's a region that is responsible for almost 2/3 of global manufacturing output, over 50% of trade, and at the same time, it is subject also to great power competition. So this is really a region where it is important to engage. We engage by promoting dialogue, disseminating standards so as to level the global playing field. We have in particular a strategic framework for cooperation with the Indo-Pacific. We have a regional program with Southeast Asia that encompasses all countries of ASEAN. And it's a region as well that has proved that it was more resilient to shock than other regions, as it stood the shock of COVID first and then the war in Ukraine better than other regions. Even if the last crisis in the Strait of Hormuz has been a considerable shock because the region is more dependent on energy imports from the Gulf than other regions. But certainly it's a global motor of growth. It's the region, it's a driver of growth. It is a region which has a tremendous potential, and it's a region with whom the OECD is very willing to further engage in the future. And I would like to stress in this regard that for a year or two we have opened accession discussions with Indonesia and Thailand. who aim to become OECD members. So this is testimony of the growing engagement of the OECD with the region.
Wow, a perfect way to describe the current situation. Then, Director Daho, I must ask, what about South Korea? Where does Korea fit into this changing economic landscape? And what role do you think Korea could play in the Indo-Pacific economy?
Korea has a lot of assets. It's a technological hub. It's an export-driven, but also it's an export-driven country with a very strong manufacturing base. It is active in areas where the OECD countries are perhaps have lost ground a little bit vis-à-vis China in particular. I would enumerate in particular semiconductors, critical batteries, clean energy technologies, digital devices, electronics. So there's a wide number of areas where the Republic of Korea is demonstrating its capacity as a technological powerhouse. I would say that to complement what I was saying earlier, that in order to build further economic security, we need to promote partnership between OECD and non-OECD countries. Let's take critical minerals as an example again. Southeast Asia is home of a lot of critical minerals. I mentioned that Indonesia held two-thirds of the global output of nickel. Philippines is also an important player. And at the other end of the spectrum of the value chain in downstream industries, Korea is very strong. It's the last country that is in the top 10 battery manufacturers, with LG and Samsung in particular. It is strong in semiconductors, in renewable energy technologies that are all mineral intensive. So it shows clearly that by working in partnership with countries from the region, namely the Philippines, and Indonesia for critical minerals, but other countries for other critical value chains, Korea has a strong potential to continue building on its standing as a technological powerhouse and a strong manufacturing country.
Well, we'll definitely be looking for more opportunities and potential from Korea as well. Now, finally, before we let you go, if we look ahead, since you're at the Jeju yourself, what should be the top priorities for international cooperation moving forward?
Hard question. I would say that cooperation is of essence. There can be differences among countries, but it's important to sit around the table to be able to discuss them. This is what the G7 and the G20 have tried to promote recently. They addressed global imbalances. We know what are some of the roots of these global imbalances, including at the level of some domestic economies. There can be differences of opinion, of views, but it's important that countries talk to each other to try to address them. So continuous dialogue, that's one important way forward. I would say that because we talked quite a lot about critical minerals, it feeds into critical industries for the future, from green electrification to the digital transition, going through the defense industry. So it's very important to maintain continuous access to these critical inputs to a certain number of important value chains for the economy of the future. And therefore, for this, we need more partnerships between, in particular, consuming and producer countries, so as to promote diversification of supply. And I would say that trying to further open up markets at times where there is a temptation to perhaps get investment and trade regimes more restrictive. Keeping markets open is very important, with a view to also maintaining some of the dividends in terms of bargaining power for consumers and livelihoods for a lot of people around the world that the global economy has delivered for a few decades. So talking to each other, diversifying critical supply chains, maintaining market open.
Wow, it's a very timely reminder that global challenges ultimately require global cooperation and continued dialogue as well. Thank you so much for your time tonight. We'll have to wrap up our discussion. We really appreciate it, Director Dahu.
It was my pleasure. Thank you very much for inviting me.
And that'll be all from us on Within the Frame tonight. Be sure to tune in again next time as we continue to explore the stories that matter. Until then, stay informed and engaged.